The FIA is currently being rocked by reports of mismanagement, mass firings, and corruption. For months now, the FIA president Mohammed Ben Sulayem has shown top-level staff the door by removing them or forcing them out. F1's drivers have spoken out against him, but this week there have been yet more sackings. That is becoming the norm at the FIA though. What isn't normal is the corruption and misspending of funds which has been exposed by those removed. Today, I'll fill you in on the worst story to come out of the FIA so far. This is really serious, so don't go anywhere. The list of recent sackings and exits from the FIA reads like their staff records. Sporting Director Steve Nielsen and Head of FIA Commission for Women Deborah Mayer left in December 2023. Leading engineer Tim Goss went a month later, then CEO Natalie Robin left in May. Director of Communications Luke Skipper and Secretary General of Mobility Jacob Bangsgaard went in October. Race Director Niels Wittich was fired earlier this month, as well as the FIA's compliance officer Paolo Bizzarri. This week, the list has continued to grow. Janet Tan, who was going to take charge of her first F2 race as race director this weekend, has been sacked. Long-serving FIA race steward Tim Mayer has also gone. Mayer, who is the son of McLaren founder Teddy Mayer, had served at the FIA for the last 15 years, as well as being an FIA delegate in the United States. These are just the headline sackings. I'll start by covering the most recent sackings and exposing comments from Tim Mayer before talking about the blatant corruption that was revealed by even more sackings. Let's start with Janet Tan. In Qatar, she was going to take charge of her first F2 race after the previous F2 race director, Rui Marquez, had been asked to take on F1 race directing after the previous F1 race director, Niels Wittich, had been sacked. On the 12th of November, the FIA released a statement saying, "Niels Wittich has stepped down from his position to pursue new opportunities. Niels has fulfilled his numerous responsibilities as race director with professionalism and dedication. We thank him for his commitment and we wish him the best for the future." That claim from the FIA was quickly refuted by Niels himself, who spoke to the media to say that he had definitely not decided to step down to pursue new opportunities. He had been sacked. It was a story which brought the revolving door at the FIA into a new light. Over the past couple of years, a number of high-level staff have left the organization. It was a surprising number, but Wittich's story gave those exits context. Something was deeply wrong within the FIA. Janet Tan's sacking just adds to that. She was removed from her post just days before an actual race weekend. With such a short time frame before the event, a new race director has not been appointed, meaning that F1's new race director, Rui Marquez, will have to race direct for F1 and F2. Marquez was an F2 race director before moving to F1 following Wittich's firing, but despite his experience, he will be stretched covering that much work. Tim Mayer said in an interview with the BBC following his own sacking that, "I know how hard both of those jobs are. I like Rui a lot, but it'll put him under incredible pressure. There aren't a lot of platinum-level FIA race directors, which is the FIA's highest level certification. I'm one of them. It's a lot of work, and if you're doing the job right, you wake up every day with an ulcer, thinking of all the various things you need to be thinking about. They're not doing themselves any favors. They're literally running out of people to do these jobs." With F1's race direction under greater scrutiny than ever, and this being Marquez's second ever F1 race, it is a terrible position to put him in. The last time one person did both was the late FIA F1 director Charlie Whiting, who died in 2019. He stopped combining the two roles more than a decade ago when it was decided the workload was too high. If a legendary race director of Whiting's caliber said it was too much work, then it seems an appalling position to put Rui in. The reasons behind these firings are the most disappointing part of this. Mayer said he was fired via a text from one of Ben Sulayem's assistants on Tuesday. "After 15 years of volunteering my time as a steward, a decade teaching other stewards, and hundreds of hours volunteering in other roles, I got a text from one of his assistants. For a federation that relies on volunteers, to fire by text somebody who's made a significant contribution does not speak well of the management of the federation," Mayer said. This is not the first time that Ben Sulayem, or MBS, has gotten his lackeys to impress his views and opinions onto F1. as well as the recent swearing crusade he has set the begrudging FIA stewards on. The FIA president was also investigated for pressuring officials to overturn a Fernando Alonso penalty at the 2023 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. He was cleared of any wrongdoing, but considering the recent firings of anyone who oppose him, it's hard to trust that investigation's findings. Mayer said the reason for his dismissal as a steward was that MBS took offense at the contents of an appeal document filed by the Circuit of the Americas in relation to a €500,000 fine for a track invasion at the US Grand Prix. COTA officials were not best pleased at the judgment, Mayer said, considering a similar situation at the Canadian Grand Prix this year led to just a warning. Mayer, who was acting in his role as sporting organizer for the 3 Grand Prix in the USA, said his involvement in the appeal initially led to him being removed from the stewards panel at the Sao Paulo Grand Prix earlier this month, before his firing as a steward this week. He also spoke about the removal of Janet Tan as F2 race director. "She is the epitome of the type of person we want working for the FIA, the best of the next generation of race directors," Mayer said. "I don't know the circumstances, but one would think they would work very hard to keep someone of her character." The FIA is in a shocking state, and with FIA elections coming up next year, the best that Formula One can hope for is the FIA president's swift removal. However, the explosion of corruption within the FIA means we cannot rely on that happening either. Before I talk about that though, if you enjoy the daily F1 news we provide, please give the video a like and subscribe to F1 Reverse. It really does help us do what we do. Thanks a lot. An investigation by the UK-based outlet The Times has exposed the shocking management of FIA funds and how those who speak out against potential corruption by the FIA president are forcefully removed. Yesterday they reported that the FIA has ended the service of 2 members of the committee that scrutinizes its finances after they expressed concerns about a $1.5 million fund set up at the suggestion of MBS. At the meeting of the 4-person audit committee for the FIA, questions were raised over whether it would be appropriate for Ben Sulayem to suggest offering $1.5 million to international motoring clubs, who will vote when the president seeks re-election in 2025. The money for the $1.5 million fund was to come from the FIA president's personal expenses allowance from the FIA. In February, the auditing committee received information from the finance department that asked questions about the administration of funds allocated for the president's expenses and the absence of receipts. The finance committee was led to believe that MBS was intending to spend a proportion of that entitlement on the maintenance of his private jet, which is not against the FIA's rules. However, the lack of receipts was an issue and was against French law where the FIA is based. When MBS was asked for receipts to abide by French law, the president decided to stop using his $1.5 million expenses allowance and instead pay out of his own pocket. A decision which raises serious questions about the unreceipted use of his allowance prior to that. Bertrand Bardre, chairman of the committee, and Tom Purvis were terminated in June, 3 days after Bardre raised the issues of the FIA president trying to give his $1.5 million expenses allowance to international motoring clubs. The last meeting of the audit committee with Bardre as chairman was on June 3rd. Before the meeting, the committee was informed of the president's suggestion that the $1.5 million might be directed instead to a fund for motoring clubs worldwide. Questions were raised at the audit committee over whether the new use of the $1.5 million was appropriate, because it was going to clubs around the world who would have a vote when the president sought re-election at the end of 2025. Bardre was due to present the committee's findings to the FIA General Assembly on June 13th. He was told that he was not to travel in person and to join them over Zoom instead. At the General Assembly, MBS formally announced the creation of the new President's Development Fund, paid for by the $1.5 million he wouldn't be using as he didn't want to give receipts for his expenses. On his Zoom call, Bardre relayed the audit committee's feedback. Then, on June 16th, the Senate members received communications from Carmelo Sanz de Barros, the Senate president, asking for an e-vote on whether to end the service of Bardre and Purvis. The vote was carried. Here we have 2 people who questioned whether there were moral issues with MBS setting up a fund paid for by the FIA for him to dish out money to the people who vote for him being sacked. This is not the first time in recent months that people who have stood up to MBS's management of the FIA have been removed. The FIA's compliance officer, Paolo Bizzarri, was let go within the last month. His role was to ensure that all staff, including the president, abided by the FIA's own rules and laws. He headed the investigation into MBS's interference into Alonso's penalty at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. His role as compliance officer was protected from the FIA president's authority, and he could only be removed from his position by a vote of the FIA Senate. No such vote took place, and there are no details regarding his removal. George Russell said at the Qatar Grand Prix yesterday that the drivers would love to get a little bit of clarity and understanding of what's going on, and, who's getting fired next. While that is phrased in a joking manner, this is no joke. There should be serious concerns over the obvious corruption occurring within the FIA and the purging of anyone and everyone who offers any opposition to MBS. Formula One's governing body has serious issues, and they're now having a serious impact on Formula One. The sport has the power to make life hard for MBS. They have the power to put pressure on him and the FIA to better the management of the organization. They are the FIA's flagship sport, and now is the time to make use of that position. And if they can't, well, in 2009, the sport came incredibly close to breaking away from the FIA. The financial and legal implications of doing so are unfathomably complicated. But if it is for the good of the sport, then surely it should be considered again. What do you think of everything that is happening within the FIA? Let me know in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.